All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is our second official Fireside chat with the Alpha Tribe crew. Super excited to have a personal friend of mine on with us today, Mr. Dave Warden. We'll get into Dave's bio here and his background, but excited to get into it with him and get his perspective on a lot of things of his career. From struggles with transition to entrepreneurship to just general advice for veterans. But Dave, appreciate you carving out time to meet with us today.
Yeah, I guess for sure.
Cool. Well, let's see. Before we get into the bio, I'll pull up this real quick. But yeah, found some old pictures. I know we have these are some respectable ones. We could have put some other ones, some non-respectable ones of us. We've got plenty of those too. But I'll like you can see here. I'll give some high-level intro. But Dave and I met in 2008 in the late entry program. We went on to be in the same boot camp platoon. And then subsequently, like we were both reservists, so we were both in Tampa, going to school together. Kind of both had aspirations for OCS and to be officers. But Dave got the call to serve while in school, and then his reserve unit was mobilized, and it kind of changed the trajectory of his life really. Dave was wounded on that deployment pretty severely, and then had to deal with recovering and finishing school and all that, and really trying to figure out what's next after. I believe you wanted to be a pilot, right? Originally, was the plan. So
rotary.
You go from want to fly helicopters to now being medically retired from the Marine Corps and having to figure something else out. So super cool. A lot of adversity in your story, and we'll get into that. But yeah, a couple bullet points there. But I would love to just turn it over to you if you want to kind of give everybody a background and your personal and professional bio.
Yeah, man. Thank you for the introduction and the complimentary photos here. 7 years in the Marine Corps, and then exited in 2015. Went back to school to finish up my bachelor's, and then pursued my master's after that. Got all that knocked out, and then my career just went down a very crazy path. Started in finance, absolutely hated Wall Street. I am just not that guy. Jumped into a early phase startup, and then from there that was acquired by one of our largest competitors. And right after that, got a call to launch a MedTech startup, and then that's been my primary focus ever since. And have had the privilege of running a couple of large MedTech companies, but that's kind of where I'm at, and that's the 10,000-foot view if you want to know about my career.
Yeah, I remember. I remember in like 2014 when I was getting back from Afghanistan, and I was like, you were still in finance, and you were like, dude, come work with me. And then I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds cool, because I don't know what I'm gonna do. And then as the day got closer, you were like,
we'd be dead.
You were like, fuck that, dude. You're like, I left. You're like, I'm in some like bounty hunting startup or something. But
pretty wild exit out of college, and went to work for one of the nation's largest finance firms as a senior broker. And then I had a couple, roughly 50 million assets under management, making well into six figures at 24 years old. And I'm sorry, no 24-year-old should ever make that much. It's just the God's honest truth. And then get a call out of the blue, and my buddies were launching a startup, a couple other Marines and their brother, and kind of gave up on finance. And I'm like, it sounds like what you guys are doing is way cooler. And my first question was, is it legal? And turns out it was. It was just an uncharted industry. and it involved basically privatization of law enforcement, and taking the tasks that most cops don't want to do and handing them over to the private sector. And it scaled rapidly, but like going from that great career in finance where I had that 401k, I had the benefits, like I had absolutely everything in the palm of my hand, and jumping into a $500 a week maybe paycheck, as we scaled the company, like it was a hit. But it was the best move I ever made, and it got me away from corporate America, and I never looked back. And then just watching that company grow and watching it scale, and just seeing the impact that we were truly making, was fun. And I'm still involved with the company that acquired us today, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud to see the company doing well. They're employing 160 employees right now. So very it did well. And then, as far as my current MedTech company, IntuBlade, launched that with one of my closest friends. Met him while I was pursuing my master's. He was pursuing his MD at University of South Florida. And then we've scaled that company from grassroots of us funding it ourselves, to raising capital, to going through the FDA, through just all the leaps and bounds of launching a medtech startup. And there's a reason why small businesses don't do this. Like, it is a very difficult industry, and we've definitely done well there. So
awesome. Well,
yeah.
excited to get into it in more detail.
Sure.
Let's stop sharing our cool pictures now. We'll transition into a couple of questions. So yeah, why don't we start like earlier on? So we mentioned before, right? Like you kind of, a lot of veterans may relate to this, right? Like, and even though like this was you're early in your military career, not so much your transition, but you had this idea of what at least your military path was going to be, like your young adult life, right? Being pilot, and maybe figure it out after that.
Yeah.
And then obviously you get wounded on your deployments, kind of change that. So can you start just by walking us through like what happened in 2010, and kind of like how did that change like your life trajectory?
Yeah, man. So, I'll take it a step back from that, and, obviously started enlisted, graduated OCS in 2009. My unit was getting spun up, and it was the first opportunity that I saw to actually go to Afghanistan. And I'm like, you know what, like, this might be a once in a lifetime opportunity. And it was, I'm sure of all of us, that have served, like, we look back at like Iraq, like 03, 04, 05, 06 even. And, you're like, am I ever going to get that opportunity? Well, in Afghanistan in 2010, it was the Wild Wild West. It was the opportunity of, what those guys experienced in 03 to 06. So, I couldn't pass on it. So I withheld my commission, deployed, and, ended up, it was one of the most kinetic environments that I think any Marine could be instantly thrown in. And we were literally under fire from the first week that we were there. I think we had daily contact. It was absolute hell. This was southern Afghanistan, Helmand Province, down around Sangin Valley, Marja, all that stuff's popping off. And August 22nd, 2010. I don't ever refer to it as my worst day of my life, because like I gained so much from it, and so much life lessons and experience from it. But yeah, I was hit a couple times with very close blast exposure, and the last one got me. I forget, there was a total of either 5 or 6 IEDs that day, within very close proximity. We were running a very small unit, small team, and the last one ended up breaking my neck, broke my back, severe TBI, like all the fun stuff. Ended up getting medevaced out of country. Spent some time in Germany, bounced over to Walter Reed, and then ended up back here in Tampa at James Haley just for their polytrauma and their blast clinic. And like, you know, I was myself along with a handful of other guys were like the early guinea pigs of their programs. And it was like, well, let's try this on these guys and just see what happens. And, you know, I'd like to think we kind of paved the way for the guys that were to come, you know, in the future. But, you know, there was definitely lessons taught there. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate you sharing that. It's definitely,
Yeah.
I remember
And
that
stayed
time.
in for a couple of years after that, you know, did some lobbying in DC, and then, you know, finally made my exit in 2015. So,
yeah, I remember the night your parents got the call. Your dad called me, and I was like, I was already pretty hammered. I was like pre-gaming for some like college party. I just drove to his house. Anyway, I was like, he needs me over there. So I like went and spent time with your dad. I know he was like trying to figure out how he was gonna get to Germany and everything.
yeah, I think it was a rough call, man. They got the call at like 9:30 in the morning, like their time. But I convinced this British hospital nurse to loan me a phone, and you know, everyone's like, I think it was in, it might have been in Bagram at the time. I can't even remember where, but definitely hadn't exited country yet. And she's like, I'm not supposed to do this, and I'm like, I don't care. You know, like, give me your phone. And I'm like, you know, I'm like trying to remember phone numbers and everything else. She's like, just give me, my fingers weren't working. She's like, give me the damn phone. And yeah, you know, I was able to get that one phone call home.
Nice.
And yeah.
Cool. Can you maybe we'll fast forward a little bit, like through, I know you went through like a recovery period and treatment and everything. But as you were coming out of treatment and you started to like, I know at first you were like with a cane and everything, and as you like recover from your back injury, you started getting mobile again. I'm sure you started to kind of realize like, all right, well, what next? You're probably being told you were going to get medically retired. So I'm sure you had to think about like, what do I do as a civilian, right? Because now you're not going to commission, you're not going to be a pilot like you desired. So can you talk us through like that period?
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, and at the time, you know, I can't speak to them now, but the Marine Corps, like Wounded Warrior Battalion, was absolutely just a godsend. And, you know, they handled all of the paperwork for me as far as, you know, VA filings and things like that. And, you know, they handled that transition pretty well. And they also got me back, you know, enrolled into USF. And at that time, you know, I think I was like 5 credits shy of my bachelor's or something like that, you know, something silly. And so I got back in with USF, and I can't speak highly enough of like their veteran, you know, affairs department there. Dr. Larry Brow, I think he still runs it, was a massive mentor of mine, and you know, motivated me, you know, to get through those years. So that was my next step, I want to say. But you know, for what you guys are doing and with your organization and what you're trying to do, there was not that support group out there. And you know, we joked about this call that, you know, a lot of guys are like, you know, trying to find support at, you know, the VFW or like the VA. Like that is the last place you want to be at. Like that is the most toxic, harmful environment you could ever expose yourself to. And I'm sure, you know, anyone that watches this that, you know, is truly transitioning, like, can express that. So, you know, I think getting back enrolled, you know, in school was a good step. But another thing is like, you're not, you know, yes, there was a veteran community at USF, but there wasn't a lot of dudes like me. And you know, I'm not going to bash branches on this, but I'm sorry, like some of our experiences were not the same. And you know, being thrown in that environment, and like, you want to talk about your stressors of being on a ship for 7 months, like, I don't care. Like, we're not the same. And you know, going from that or learning from that, I think it was a good stepping stone, but it definitely wasn't where I wanted to find myself. And then, you know, the brokerage I ended up with, they had a really good veterans transition program, that was extremely successful. And they were bringing on, you know, vets, mostly combat vets, and transitioning them into, brokers for their company. We're aggressive, we're go-getters, like we get the job done, and give us an objective of, hey, you're going to talk to 100 clients this week, or 100 potential clients. Like, okay, cool, watch this. Like that's an easy day for me. It's nothing like I've been faced with in the past, and I think they were some of the early adapters of that, and it's reason why they're ranked in the top 5 companies to work for in America. And they still are, and that's been ongoing for 15 plus years. So
yeah, I'm sure you, like what you said, probably resonates with Christian a lot. He's like works in tech sales, and he's said time and time again how he would hire veterans like hand over fist, like, because for that exact mentality that you just said, like call 100 clients, like, yeah, sure, like done. Like,
what are you gonna do, say no?
Verbatim. Like, so I had another guy say the exact same thing to me. He's like, are you kidding me? Like, compared to what I was doing in when he was kind of still in, he was like, I'll call 200 people. It's easy.
Right. It's laughable.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's like, how bad can I ruin this guy's day? Or how bad can I piss this guy off? Like, he's already going to say no. And who knows, maybe I can turn him.
yeah. So, yeah, I think you have a really unique perspective that a lot of like our members and other veterans can learn from. And to me, it's like career reinvention, right? Like you again, you at first just your only aspiration, going into college was be a Marine, right? You and I both.
Sure.
And plans change, right? And then all of a sudden you realize you can't do that forever. And you got to figure something else out, right? So dip your toe in finance, and did that for a couple of years and saw a lot of success, but you realize it really wasn't for you. And you not only took a pay cut, but you took a lot of like risk into like pursuing something that you may be a little more passionate about. Can you any and
that was another thing with finances. I mean, that was building a book of business from the ground up. It wasn't like, hey, here's a bunch of assets and you're going to manage them. Like, no, it was going out there and making those contacts and making those relationships and like convincing people to essentially give you their life savings. And it's like, okay, I'm going to be a good steward of your money. Like, that's a hard sell. Someone comes to me with that, they better have a damn good plan.
Yeah. So would you say like your time as a broker, like you kind of discovered the entrepreneurial side of yourself?
Absolutely. And it was one of those things where, you better be able to, you better be able to produce, because I mean, they will get rid of your ass, and it's they have a lot of money and a lot of time invested in you, just like the military does. But if you mess up, I mean, you're on the first plane out. And I respected that about that industry. That's one correlation I actually can see. But yeah, I think that was a good lesson learned. Everyone's replaceable. Like, I don't care who you are, you're replaceable.
So so what would you say to like a veteran? Like, we even saw in our Slack a couple members posted like, hey, like I did this in the military and I got out and I tried this, I became a journeyman or some like, hands-on, like whatever, like blue collar industry. And now they don't want to do that, right? Now they want to do a white collar industry. So like, what would you say to people who want to make these like career changes and are still trying to figure out what they want to do?
Choose your passion and don't let money ever drive you towards that passion. Like, I mean, literally choose what you want to do, choose what you want to change. And I don't care if that's, a veterinarian or, a blacksmith. Like, it makes no difference. Like, choose your path, and at the end of the day, you're going to make the same amount of money. If you're truly passionate about it and you wake up every morning and you're excited to go to work and like you're happy, just choose your passion. And I don't care if you were a welder in the Marine Corps and now you want to be a Fortune 500 CEO. Well, figure it out, man. Like, figure out the stepping stones, like find some good mentors and get there. But don't ever count on your veteran status to carry you to the top, because I'm telling you right now, in the real world, it does not.
Definitely.
You see way too many, 05s out there that are, like whatever rank it is. I don't care, right? They retire out, they've got their pension, they're comfortable, whatever. And now they're going to go launch the next Black Rifle coffee. Well, guess what? You're not going to make $1 million in your first year. Like, if you do, you might be the 1% of the 1%. Like, it's not going to happen. And just because your rank meant something in the service, like, that doesn't carry shit in the civilian world. And we see that way too often. I have old bosses that come to me for jobs all the time, and it's like, you were a piece of shit in the Marine Corps. Like, why would I bring you into the fold now? And that's just a little bit of advice and hiring advice for.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've been out for 7 years or so now, and I would say that other than meeting a veteran at work, my service has boiled down at this point to, oh, you were in the military? That's cool.
Cool. Yep.
Not what branch were you in? What rank were you? What was your job? Those questions never come up. It's like blanket respect for being a veteran. Now let's move on, right? Like, do you perform?
Yep.
And there is a level of blanket respect you get. But I could have pushed papers in the Air Force or been Ricky Recon. It does not matter to like the average civilian coworker. Once you're in your field, it's not going to get you the promotion. It's not going to get you the job. Like I said, unless like I said, I have gotten opportunities because other veterans were there, other Marines, and you're like able to leverage that network. But unless you're going to like base your whole career off like seeking out veterans to give you a handout job, like you got to build that skill set and your value outside of being a veteran.
You do. And, I mean, a lot of people, and I think this was like one of your questions that you had queued up, but it's appropriate now, is like, what makes veterans like great entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
Like, truth is, they're not. They have some skill sets that could make them great entrepreneurs, but, unless they're hungry and they have that drive, civilian and command will outwork your ass all day long.
Yeah.
Don't think just because you were, you're stacked with medals and accolades like in the military that's going to transition over to, civilian service. Like it's not going to happen. You better be hungry. And that's what makes a good, entrepreneur. That's what makes, a good veteran entrepreneur. Like it really is. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you highlighted a lot of to summarize, like there's a lot of misconceptions about veterans starting their own businesses, I'm sure, right? Like, right. And it's like that everybody's gonna be good at it, and like the skills directly translate. And, I think to me, it sounds like what you're saying is like, probably takes first and foremost the type of person that is successful as an entrepreneur. I think if you maybe combine that with being a veteran, that can accelerate you. But if you're not that person at the core, which is like all the work ethic that you're mentioning, right?
Couldn't agree more. You might climb the ladder, to be a quick hire for a government-based job. But if you're trying to go out there and launch your own company, like you're starting on the same playing field as everyone else.
Yeah. I've got a question, Sebastian, actually, before we move on sort of on this. I think you have a really interesting story because, Dave, you're in the Marine Corps, which is like, the military in general is a very hierarchical, kind of bureaucratic organization. Then you went to a bank, which is like largely very similar. And then you took the plunge into like startup world or like, being an entrepreneur. And there's like culturally, it's like a monumental difference. I actually did the same thing. I struggle with the same thing coming out of college. Like after university, I went to go work at publicly traded, multi-billion-dollar healthcare consulting company. I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. And like I lasted a year and I was like, I just couldn't do it anymore. And then I went to a really small startup, which was like the polar opposite. And I did that for a year. And I was like, I don't think this is it for me either. And then I kind of landed at like more of a growth stage company that had found product market fit, was doing a couple $100 million in revenue, like kind of seeking IPO or acquisition. And I found that like that was really kind of like for me, my personality and kind of my growth path was like the right fit, but it was trial and error to get there. And I think like your perspective on this would be really interesting because you kind of did the same, and it seems like you found your stride more in kind of like that early stage startup environment? I'd be curious to learn more about that.
Yeah, for sure. Because, I mean, you can have that command and control in the military, right? And they're like, hey, this is our mission. Now tell me how you're going to get it done. Well, that directly, relates to small business. And my role, my involvement in that first initial government contracting startup was leading business development. Well, hey, this is our goal. Grow, scale the company, figure out a way. Like, we're starting from nothing. We don't know anything about this industry. Truthfully, we didn't. And like, figured out. So that involved us, going out, and I mean, it's all portions of business development. Like, the first thing I wanted to do is learn everything about my competitor, right? My enemy. What contracts do they have? What makes them better than me? Why are they bigger than me? Why do they have more employees? Why do they make more money? And when you start relating that back to like, a operational tempo per se, you're connecting the same dots. It's just a matter of who does it more efficiently. And I would argue, as a startup and as a small business, you're going to run as lean as possible. I mean, there were weeks where we forgoed paychecks to ensure that we could have, more folks working for us that were getting paid, that weren't going to walk out the door on us. Like, that's the harsh reality of it. And just give us a mission. And I mean, that's the only, that's the largest largest correlation I can make between a startup and the military is like, you have an objective. Just figure out how you're going to get there. It's very simple. It really is. And sure, that's the the macro size, but really delve into it. And there's your plan. There's your course. Like,
Yeah, that's awesome. For maybe we can switch gears just for the, like, maybe, we've already seen in our Slack community, we have some other founders in there, people kind of promoting their businesses and sharing that they're growing businesses. Seeing as you have raised money and you've led companies through M&A, do you have any advice for a veteran founder that's maybe trying to get their first round?
All right, where do we start? It's not easy. It is not easy, and I'll be the first to tell you that. My business partner, he's a Army medic, or former Army medic, now ER physician. We can attest to this. It is not easy, and people don't invest in the company; they invest in the people. And we were very blessed that we went out there and we sold ourselves. We didn't necessarily sell our story, but we sold ourselves and could back it up with proven results, right? And it wasn't just like, give me $1 million and I'm going to turn it into $10 million in 3 years. Like, we weren't making those promises. Like, did we do it? Yes, but it's let's start. You want to talk about raising money, so let's start at the very earliest stage, right? And that's going to be at initial contact and due diligence. So let's talk about initial contact. You should be choosing your investors. As much as your investors are investigating and looking into you, you should be doing the same to them. If they do not add strategic value, like, there's a saying, like, all cash is green. Like, I don't agree with it. Like, I do believe there's dumb money out there. And we were presented with some very silly offers, right out of the gate, that grossly, and this is the MedTech company, this is IntuBlade, that grossly undervalued the company. And it was like, well, we don't have another offer on the table, but we need the money. We're tired of self-funding. We should probably just take it. And it would have been the most foolish thing we ever could have done, where we're giving up board seats, we're giving up significant equity at extremely low valuations. And thank God we didn't go that route. And I can touch on, like, I'm going to go broad on this topic, and I can touch about accelerators and pitch competitions and all this stuff that we did, to make this company survive. But it was those strategic investors that came in early on. And, I can't mention the company. It's a very large healthcare staffing company. They came in, they had the full faith in us. They put in 300K, in a convertible note, a safe note, for those that are familiar. So they put in 300K. And, when you talk about investors, right, you have to remember that an investor is not a sniper, right? So they're going to take 300K and they're going to spread that 300K, and they're going to put 300K in 20 companies, right? So it's a shotgun blast. If I have a dude at 200 yards, like, I'm taking out the long gun. I'm not getting out my shotgun. Now, with that said, that precision rifle shot that I can make, and I could take all of that money, 300 times 20, and invest in one company with full faith and confidence, like, I'm never going to do it. All eggs in one basket, like, fuck that. So they fire that shotgun. They need one pellet to hit. And that pellet is, the next freaking Facebook, Amazon, whatever you want to look at. Like, they've, 1,000x their money. So what do they care about the other 19 pellets that are out there floating? They don't. And, we learned that early on. And thank God this company took a chance in us. They gave us that $300,000. Then, that got us, where we weren't funding the company ourselves. From that, we started doing, the accelerators, Y Combinator, like we did. I mean, I can go down a list of accelerators, everything from Berkeley to Stanford to Harvard to, Princeton. I mean, like, we were all over the place, Yale, all your Ivies. And we got nothing out of them. And it was like this promise of, like, you're going to be introduced to all these investors, and, like, they're going to come in and just throw money at you. Couldn't be further from the truth. They might throw money at you, but it's going to be at valuations that you are not comfortable accepting. And past that initial raise, we did pitch competition after pitch competition, and we kept winning. Like, and it's really funny how we were doing it. We would go to these competitions. My business partner and I do not rehearse a pitch, period. Like, I mean, you see these Shark Tank pitches and they're beautiful, and it's like, all right, cue to you. Like, no. And everyone we went up against, like, they were down to the word. Like, these people looked in the mirror all night and practiced this stuff. We showed up and I didn't know what was on the next slide. And, like, we would improv this, and we came off so original and honest that we kept winning them. And I'm going to give a shout out real quick to the organization called Warrior Rising. So it's ran by a Green Beret. His name's Jason Van Camp, amazing individual. We went to his pitch competition in Iowa and ended up winning the thing. It was funny because we gave our pitches against a couple different companies, and I'll be honest, like, I thought they kicked our asses. And my business partner and I were like, dude, let's just go get, like, a couple beers at the bar. So we literally, like, walked out of the room, went straight to the bar, and, started, like, slamming back beers. And all of a sudden, like, a couple of the judges that were in the audience came up to us, and they're like, hey, would you mind coming over to our table? And this was in Iowa, of all places. And we walked over and sat with them, and they had a ton of questions for us, and they were all valid questions. And it was just like, okay, like, you come to real quick. And they're like, hey, however this comes out, like, we want involved. And then we went on to raise 7 figures plus with them. And then, but they were all strategic. Like, we chose them. They of course they chose us. And we won the pitch competition for like 20K or something. But they chose us, and they came to us. So raising money, like, I mean, my greatest advice is finding the right investors that are truly going to invest in you, and not just your company. And find the one that will pick up the phone at 2, 3 a.m. and you're like, hey man, I'm scrambling here. I don't have a contact. My goods are stuck in customs. Like, who do you know? And I can honestly say everybody on my board, every one of my investors will always take that phone call. And, that's how we went from a early stage startup to just being valued at, 9 figures plus. And that was a good feeling. But it was all through the right investors.
That's awesome, dude. Congrats. Well-deserved success. And sounds like you guys busted your ass to get there. So, yeah. Awesome. Well, maybe we can kind of round it out and kind of go more broad again, and maybe just like high level, like through your career journey, right? Everything that's happened, all the pivots, all the new industries. Like how has your like personal leadership style evolved since being Corporal Warden to now successfully being a co-founder of a high valued company?
That's a great question, man. Everyone's got leaders, right? And some are really good and some are really bad. Like, take the bad traits and toss them, and take the good traits, and even if it's from a bad leader, like, use that. And that's how you lead a team. That's how you lead a company. And then, on top of that, and talking about leadership, like, one piece of advice that I would strongly give anybody, especially if you're going into a partnership, is choose your partners wisely. Like, make sure you are picking the right people, because you're arguably married to these people. And, when you start raising money, like, a business becomes a business. It is no longer two friends doing business together. And this is a great piece of advice that I got from a guy that was a, early investor in Black Rifle Coffee. And he tried to invest in our company, and side story, we couldn't stand him. But anyways, you need one person that is the innovator, and then you need somebody that can execute. And I've been very blessed with my partner in the MedTech company that he can do both, and I add to the execution level. I'm not an innovator, and I'll be the first to admit it. Like, I admit my weaknesses, but I can damn sure execute. And that's, if I had to close with anything, like, just please choose your business partners wisely, because they can really hurt you.
Yeah, it's great advice. And then maybe also just kind of like on the topic of just like general advice for vets who have watched this. You're married, you're a father, you're still involved with the federal company, and you're traveling all over the U.S. Raising money and doing this. Like, how do you find balance with personal growth, family, and professional success?
Dude, that's such a good question. It's a very understanding and loving wife that gets it. And it's like, look, this is a means to an end. Like, let me live out, I'm 36, I'll be 37 this year. I've only got X amount of good years in me, and then I'm done, dude. Like, and like, yeah, still invest in companies and still stay involved, like, of course, like, advise, consult, like, whatever, but like, bust your ass when you're young. And I like, don't think I give up a moment, outside of, of a window, with my wife or son, because I don't. But, like, find a balance, and if that means sleeping 4 hours a night, and skipping a workout or skipping whatever, just use your time wisely. And family comes over everything, but just remember, like, the work that you're putting in now is ultimately the roof that you're going to put over their head. And I just, my 2 cents.
Yeah. Family support networks, definitely important. Cool. And then maybe last question before we end is, just any just parting words of wisdom. You know, obviously our we have a vast vast portfolio of veterans in our community, but we're certainly aiming to grow a large portion of Alpha Tribe to be in kind of like that transitioning service member. So, you know, if you're talking to vets getting out, maybe exploring career options, like any parting wisdom for them?
Again, man, it's just find your passion and pursue it. Like if you want to be, you know, that corporate slave, do it. You know, the money's good at first, the benefits are phenomenal. Like you have your schedule. That's great. But if you like to fish on a Tuesday, you know, without asking permission, like, you know, consider going down the more difficult road. I'm sorry, there's no price for freedom, and you know, you can't buy it, but you can damn sure create it. So.
Well, there's one thing I always loved about you, dude, is you definitely you fly at whatever speed you want to, and we have some crazy stories of that, but it's always been a part of you and something I appreciate. So obviously, not knowing when we were 18, you know, what kind of career field that aligned to, it makes total sense to me now, seeing you being a business owner. Yeah, proud of you and really happy for your success, and I appreciate you taking time to talk to us today.
Yeah, man. And I'm here to support you guys. You know, I'd say, you know, anyone that has questions, you know, whether it be MedTech, finance, government contracting, like I'm on LinkedIn, and that's probably the best way to reach me. And you know, I'm always open for a conversation or you know, text, whatever. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, dude. Appreciate it again.
Thanks, guys. You all have a good night.